Okay, we're here with episode 4. This week, last week we've undergone some severe changes, so we're adjusting our strategy as we go. But the primary part of this podcast is to talk about our idea number 3, which have been worked on primarily by Dean and Bernie. So we're going to let them take it away with what they've come up with for idea 3.
Idea 3 went through a few things, but my input was pretty minimal by the end. Dean managed to come up with his own thing, and me and Ella gave him some input. But do you want to just say what the final idea was? Or if you want, we can should we go through the process?
Don't mind, whichever works for you best.
I mean, we can just, since we want to keep it quick, we can just talk about what it has become so far.
Sure. I wrote down a little description, so I might as well read that.
Good. Is it on Discord?
It's on here in my book. So across a number of scenarios, the player or players plays/play as the older and younger versions of a character, with a different character in each scenario, who has lost someone or something. The two can pass items or interact through the mirror in their room, and have different interests and personalities relative to their circumstances or contexts, thus having different items to interact with. The present self can pass items back to the past self to consider how things could have been different, possibly spending more time with the person who was lost. And the past self can pass items to the present self to cue memories and/or nostalgia, or remind them of the item's importance. Perhaps the player character's present, the parent has left, a friend has moved away, they've broken up with their partner, or a family member has died. There's also the possibility of someone feeling an incoming loss and looking to the future to predict how things will be. But it could be indicated as to which reality is the reflection by objects and environmental aspects being flipped sideways.
Yeah, okay.
That's pretty much it.
So this comes from our week 3 theme, which was...
Loneliness comes from a contextual expectation for company or the sharing of experiences and them not being there.
So it was initially the idea of expecting to have people to rely on, expecting there to be people, and the lack of that is the cause of the problem.
I thought someone they held close is now gone, and they only realise what they've lost now that they're lonely and they're looking.
Okay, that's pretty good. I like it.
Cheers. Pretty narrative driven.
Yeah, I assume so. But also, there's a lot of room for mechanics there with the idea of like a shared environment, but different space. So, would this be multiplayer or?
So that was a consideration that we had a discussion about earlier. Because I was thinking about it. It could be one player's in, one world and the other is in the reflected one.
Yeah. Okay.
And Ella brought up the point: if it's narrative heavy, then having multiplayer inherently makes less of the focus on the narrative and more on the interactions that they're having with each other. Like they could be goofing around or whatever, and that kind of pulls away from the seriousness of it. Also, the whole thing of if it's a present and past self, then looking at another player being the past self or the present self, there's a bit of a disconnect because you're no longer thinking of them as the same character but as someone else. That was kind of the thing, right?
Yeah, that was just what I was saying, because you sort of, when you're in a multiplayer thing, you sort of create your own narratives through the way that you interact with the other person, as opposed to necessarily going along with the narrative that these two characters are supposed to be having. Was my concern. But then I guess it could be changed to being one player, but I don't know how you do the whole...
I guess go up to the mirror and suddenly you switch to the other thing. But
I guess the question is, if players are having a good time, is that inherently a bad thing?
Yes. In this case.
If this narrative is sort of the core of the sort of concept of the whole loneliness thing, and if it is, the way Dean described it to us, it sounds like it's going to be quite a heavy, emotional sort of story, and that's definitely going to get lost if you're just, joking around with your mates whilst playing. And of course, it's not an issue, but it in the sense of, it's still a game, it's still playable and whatever. but a lot of the atmosphere is going to be lost. And so why make a narrative-driven game if it's going to be lost, you know?
Yeah, well then there would have to be the train of thought of something has to give there, whether that's going to be multiplayer, whether it's going to be the narrative basis that everything is structured around.
I'd say in this context, the best idea would probably be to forgo the multiplayer and go for a single-player thing. But yeah, you know,
where one player simply swaps between the two variables.
Because you could just go up to the mirror and your reflection goes up to it at the same time, like the reflection of you as a younger self, and then you can pass the things at that point, or just switch over. But, this because it is a weird thing because this came from Bernie's more puzzle-oriented, I guess, focus from his original interpretation of the idea, and it's just down to whether we'd want to ditch this idea for more of a mechanical one, or ditch the mechanical one for this one.
No, I think your one holds more value, being something that's actually, first of all, it's meaningful, and so, what's the point in playing with water levels when you can actually have something real and memorable and personally affecting the player, and then, you know, just a bit of fun.
Depends what audience you want to reach, I guess.
Well, I like to always go for the idea which by the end I'll be like, this held meaning.
Yeah.
I don't like to just have mindless fun is fun, is what I do most, but I hold no respect and really no like sort of real thought for those things. I think nothing when I play Call of Duty, even though it's one of my favourites. But I hold a lot more value for the things which are important or trying to say something which helps people.
I think because one of the things is, when I brought up this idea, there was just, you know, there were anecdotes. This could be interpreted as a personal thing for people, because I have anecdotal, like, feelings for it. Bernie brought up some. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, let's bring it up on this podcast where it's publicly available, but yeah. Point is, this is something that is relatable as a feeling, at least in our cases.
If you like, you can quickly load up Discord on your phone. In the text ideas, I wrote it in a way which is just ideas instead of like everything I had said. So you can say the exact same thing.
Well, I can sum it up as just the feeling that things could have been more. I guess you could have been in big quotation marks a better person or something, or treated someone in a better way, or even the reliance on you as being the one to do something, and you don't feel that you either delivered it, or you could have done a better job delivering it, or could have spent time preparing for that. Like I can bring up my things. I'm comfortable doing that. Like when my granddad was struggling with cancer, and I was busy for a lot of the time, I think. But yeah, I was invited to go and visit him, and I didn't see him in his worst state, and you know, that's something I'll never see him again. You know, I won't have that chance to see him, and I regret not going to actually, you know, see him in the time that he needed people most. So that's, I guess, because there's another one. My great grandma, I didn't see her for a good while before she died. Didn't see her at her worst when she needed people most. Similar kind of thing between the two. But yeah, point is, I look back and I go, things could have been done better, because that is a chance that I'll never have again. But yeah, that's, I guess, my kind of summary.
Mighty Ho. Well, it seems like it's pretty solid where it's been put together, so that's nice. Now obviously after this week we'll have to look at them all in a little bit more depth and see where we want to go with everything. So that's going to be a thing then. But yeah, okay. So the other things we want to discuss is we should probably start using podcasts just to update people on what we're up to and where we're at with stuff, what we're working on, because now obviously we're going to start moving away from the Google Sprint idea and moving more into individual work, more into our own sort of fields of interest and stuff like that. And after a conversation with Adam, I think it'd be a good idea to use podcasts as a session where we can just kind of commune back what we've been doing, what we've been working on in the last week, what we've been thinking about kind of over the weekend. Obviously that's subjective, but it's the idea about kind of just having a group discussion about saying like, oh no, I've been working on this, so I think this would be a cool thing to do, even if it's not directly related to the ideas as such, but it could be a nice way to actually start having a discussion that we can refer back to and see where everybody's at.
Sure.
If we think that's a good idea.
Sure.
Okay. And the other thing is what other things we think we should change about our sort of team structure in regards to methods of work and how we work on communication. It's similar. It's a similar idea, but if there's any specific things that are jumping out to people that we think we should change and the ways that we should look at.
I have a thing I'd like to change for myself.
Okay.
I've just noticed that sometimes I probably am not necessary, but I'll choose to get involved in other people's stuff, and so then I'm wasting time on the blog writing another like 1,000 or over words because I chose to participate in someone else's work to help, and that makes it really annoying to have to document everything I do when it's work related and is like, relevant when it's not my own personal work, because it takes away from the time to do my own work because I spent time helping someone else. Now I have to talk about it, so it feels weird to help, even though I'm happy to help. I'm just feeling like sometimes I'm running out of time because of it. So gonna do that less, because otherwise I'll get to where I am now and not be nowhere and still writing blog things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously blog documentation and all that sort of stuff is up to the individual. That's not that like the way you choose to document it, however much time you choose to dedicate to that is obviously a decision that you make based on how quickly you work, how detailed you feel like you need to go into stuff, and just generally your method. I mean, I know that Ella documents most of it in her book and then using a blog as backup per week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Whereas I just have one website where I put everything up on under different categories and stuff. You use a blog almost entirely, right?
I've got the website. The website is just for a thing for portfolio, and blog is thousands each week.
Yeah. So obviously we have very different methods of working the blogs, working just the documentation in general, and that's fine. But I think there's going to be a balance of getting used to which way you think is the best way for you to work, and I think if there's any way that as a team we can make that generally easier for everybody, then that's something we should discuss. I mean, I don't have any immediate ideas. Obviously, the podcast was my first idea that I was like, hey, this is a really good way to document all the important stuff, and everybody has access to it on a blog then, or on a site, or just generally an RSS link.
But the thing is, I can't show a examiner the blog. They're not going to sit there for hours noting down each time something important was said amongst the garbage. But
I've been going through and summing up the blogs each week, so that's the thing. I guess if you need it summed up, I've got notes on the blog.
I mean, I already do that. I just tailor it to the things I've said. Okay. Sometimes I'm refer to the blog to see the full conversation, because sometimes we develop on stuff together, and I just mostly say where I said anything, and then eventually with a group discussion George came up with the thing, and then they'll be like, but that's usually at the end of having said everything I did. But since you've offered, it'd be cool to get you to see anyone who's who doesn't mind to see my blog, see if it could be more efficient, but yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea. I think maybe after we've done phase 3, so that'll be the end of this week, just roughly going over each other's work, making it all as public as we can, might be a really good idea just to get some peer feedback. I mean, I'm down with that. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Sure.
I'm happy to do that for everyone, but as I said, if I'm struggling with my own blog, then
Yeah, but like maybe we could be able to give you some constructive feedback. Just say like, hey, maybe even that could be as simple as just layout. Like it's when I know like I spent long enough designing my website where I probably can't see most of the flaws in it anymore, and that's obviously a problem. So yeah, that could work.
Sure.
Very well. In regards to major structure changes, I think the biggest thing is experimentation, and letting people experiment with ideas that they've got, and kind of just going away from the primary field of just communicating everything back, just to working on some of your own stuff and just going from there, really. I think that's probably the most important thing that we look to do from now on. Obviously, when we're done with phase 3, we'll be moving into phase 4, which is about sort of just finessing the singular idea which we choose. I think generally this will benefit us as a team, because I think we try and balance all of the ideas at once, and it overwhelms us to a certain level, and it's just difficult. And I think when we've only got one idea and one thing to focus on, and we can just branch out from there and do our own things and communicate back new ideas and new tests, new prototypes, I think it will be a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, I guess because with refining, you know which bits that you want to target. When you only have, well, I guess in the past couple of weeks, when you only have a handful of days to work on one thing and then be done with it and then move on to the next one, you go, right, I know that these bits need touching up in the future, but save that for later. So it'll just be a case, I guess, of, hey, this is the thing I want to improve now, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll see when we get to it.
Yeah, I think we'll need a lot of changes, and we'll need to make sure we just communicate back how we're feeling about our work styles. I think that's really important. If we feel like the workflow and the way it's panning out isn't working for you, and you can't be productive, and you're just coming in here and you're like, I've only got 2 days to do this, and this isn't what I want to be doing at the moment, then we need to change it, because obviously we need to develop something that allows everybody to work best, because this should be something that you're passionate about and you genuinely are interested in, and that needs to be fresh, because that's what, as James said, that's what keeps us from burning out. Otherwise we're useless. So yeah,
I guess for now, shall we go around and go, hey, what have you been working on?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Sure.
Who wants to start?
I'll be 2 minutes, so maybe I can start.
Well, if wait, you'll be 2 minutes. Sorry, you're ready to go.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I thought you meant I'll be 2 minutes until I am ready.
No. No, it's only 2 minutes, because I've not actually done anything other than talk to people about their own ideas and help them, and then having to, as I said, document it. Plus backaches, plus a house problem, not helping stuff.
Fine.
So there's that, and so yeah, the only thing I have so far is a plan. I'm pretty excited to start once I'm done with blog, which is it mostly came from Adam's feedback. I'm going to look up at a few artists whose work I find, I guess, inspiring for 3D modeling, because that's what I'm going to be focusing on.
Yep.
And then I'm going to look at not the artists I found, but I'm going to look at industry standard, I guess, workflows by indie developers.
Yeah.
So as to copy their, I guess, how they do stuff and be efficient. After I got that, I'll then make one of Ella's ideas. She has a few variations of Ella's drawings that she's given me to make, but I want to know how to work at, I guess, the industry pace. So I've got that to do. But after that, I've got my own idea. Going to make my own, I guess, instruments, which I don't know if is inappropriate, like when I haven't got Ella's artwork to build off of, or really just copy. But
it's fine. If that's something you want to experiment with, then go ahead.
Yeah, because my idea was just that if instruments are expression of the self, or like your own feelings and whatever, and it's a personal thing when the person plays a musical instrument, then it'd be cool to have like organic gore type things for instruments, and I'd be researching, I guess, the human body and changing it into things that look like instruments that move around and, like, I guess, breathe and like pulse or whatever. But yeah, that's what I have my idea at the moment. Right after I've, like, as I said, figure out the workflow, make Ella's idea in a few different ways, then make my own idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but yeah,
okay.
that's all I got. Nothing yet.
Righty-ho. Yeah, no, obviously, like, just going back to your former thing, like, we've gone through a lot of changes. It's been a difficult week, like, when everything you think you know has kind of been thrown away and restarted, and you feel like you're running out of time, and you've got other stuff going on, and you're in pain, or whatever. Like, it's okay not to be as productive as you want. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll get a way around it. Like, it's not... You'll be okay. Okay? Like, just don't worry too much about it. Like, Adam's not too worried about us as a team. So, we have some really good ideas so far. So...
Just to clarify, when you say this week, do you mean since last Wednesday, or do you mean since the beginning of this?
Well, I think there's parts of both. Primarily since Monday, but obviously it's been difficult since last Wednesday, because that was when we started recognising our major issues that we had in our team.
Well, it wasn't until Friday that Adam went and threw everything
over. We weren't as productive as we want to be from the from the Wednesday to the Friday, because of the issues which we had identified on the Friday. Hit us hardest on the Friday. We kind of consolidated over the weekend and then tried to make the best of on the Monday. But yeah, no. In regards to what I've been doing this week, I wanted to rework some of the first ideas that we had for our first game, which haven't. I've come up with some interesting things, but they're not really consolidated yet. They're not sort of like definite, but I've been experimenting with some ideas about winter and what we can do with that. The idea of like smaller communities that are introverted, or the idea of how they can't communicate based on like geographical locations and stuff, and how a player might move between these and how these might affect them. And
this is idea 2?
Idea 1.
Idea 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think there's some interesting things in that, and how maybe like that becomes a problem and how that can be solved, and that involves the element of like difficult to move and like adventure around, and thus becoming the problem for the first idea. But as well as the idea that like snow and environmentals such as snow document human movement and things they touch really well, which interested me. I know I spoke to Ella about the idea about using emotes, but like sort of like doing snow angels. So you like point in a direction and like fall in the snow, and then like when you get up, it's just like a direction of where to go. And like when other people come on like after you, they're like, oh, this is the way to go, whatever. Or you draw like a big X in the sand, or not the sand, the snow. And you're like, oh, this isn't the way. So I don't know. There's some interesting things in that, as well as recording stuff like footsteps, and then how that could work. I don't know. I think I'm still working on it, and I was planning to develop a prototype this week. I don't think it's going to happen, just because of other stuff. But
sure,
that's where I got to with idea 1. On top of that, I've been working on my own 3D pipeline, which is similar to what Bernie's looking at, but slightly different. Although I think a lot of it is there's going to be a point where we should start collating it together, because I'm looking at like indie workflows as well, specifically to 3D. So we could save ourselves a lot of time just by showing information on that one.
Oh, sure. If you want, you can share that with me. That'll reduce the amount of stuff I have to do, and then I can just get on.
Yeah. Well, obviously I'm just outlining my structure and teams I'm interested in at the moment, but that's a thing I think that will take place primarily in phase 4.
As long as the indie development teams you're looking at aren't like big, like no more than like, let's say 40 people, then that should be like something we're able to do. Because like I don't want to like copy the workflow of a massive studio, because that's not what we're doing.
Well, naturally, it would be catered around the skill sets of a small team. That's the purpose of studying indie. Thus, if it appeals to me, it would appeal to you as well, because we're in a very similar circumstance. Okay. So working on that, analysing my own flow, working on some new stuff and seeing where that goes. More as just like a separate sort of element to my work that I'm conducting on my own, possibly with Bernie in the future. I've also been doing some 3D impressions of Ella's instruments, just for practice and just for some interesting concepts to see what it looks like in 3D and where it goes. But yeah, those are primarily derived from the work that Ella's already done this week. And the other stuff is just primarily things on my website and blog, just writing up week 3 and the ideas that we had that developed into the music idea. So yeah.
Cool. I guess we're going clockwise. I think end of last week I was pretty useless, but after the weekend, because Adam told us to have the weekend off. I guess on Friday I'd been thinking of, I think it was Thursday actually, I've been thinking of ways to possibly mechanically implement playing musical instruments, and I thought of some ideas and then went, hey, I guess I'll just do a basic test of whether it's feasible to just go, hey, match what's being played, because then that could be applied to just, it sets the notes automatically. But I on Monday afternoon I was, I believe, working on getting that to work. It's an analog stick input, turn it round, and you match a line that goes up and down with a line that you're making go up and down to a rhythm. And I first tried making it so it went, hey, blend it with a little, to show the coming together of the two players, blend it with a little colour block that appears in the middle of them, and then kind of presented it to you guys and got feedback and made some changes based on that. And then with a bit of free time made an extra change to go, hey, can I manipulate the size of it in real time? Yeah, I can, it's fine. Also over the weekend had to upload the prototype to Itch. That was a thing, and it meant editing a video and stuff, recording some footage. Bit of a pain in the backside, but yeah, got that sorted. So the prototype from the first idea is on Itch now. And I guess I've been thinking of the idea and came up with that. That's the thing. Worked with Bernie at first. Presented ideas to Bernie and Ella earlier. I guess the other part of it was just updating blog and website. So that was kind of nothing. That's probably about all I've done.
Okay, well, I haven't done much more. If I start on... I don't know what it's worth. Thursday, we decided on the prototype for last week for the second idea on Thursday. So I did that on Friday. Then basically got told by Adam that I shouldn't have bothered because I needed to do more visualization of the world and the potential instruments and the potential communities that were supposed to be living in this world and whatever. So the last few days I've just been looking at musical instruments and what potentially the main character could play. I don't really know how to explain it well. Sorry. It doesn't help when your work is basically all visual. Not on a podcast, anyway.
Trust me, they're cool drawings.
Yeah, I sort of experimented with... we sort of talked about it a bit first, and I think we all decided that a string instrument would be a good idea for the main character, for the player to use.
Why?
It's about tones, right? Just saying.
Yeah.
Reach mid to high tones so you can play along pretty much anything as a lead.
And string instruments are often mobile.
Yes, easily carryable, and if you're a traveller, you need to get around places.
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea anyway. Plus it sounds nice with a lot of other instruments, and if you're playing together with other people, but yeah, I found a few sort of reference images which I thought looked nice as starting points, and I sort of just went from there with designing some potential things, and of course George took those and
ruined them.
No, I was going to say used a couple of them to make 3D models, and I sort of ended up going down two potential routes design-wise based on the ones I was most interested in, and sort of one set of my designs kind of look all like boats, and the other ones look kind of like deer heads. And I was trying to figure out what sort of civilizations would have these kinds of instruments, and I was considering the fact that maybe each of the communities could have a different animal as like the thing that they use to represent themselves, and they use a lot in their imagery for their instruments and stuff. Or alternatively, if you go with the boat idea, then it's maybe a case of occupation. So I was thinking like maybe the main character comes from a community of people who do a lot of fishing and whatever in a boat, or maybe they're travellers and explorers by the sea. I wasn't sure. So yeah, I was actually going to ask everyone today, but we just haven't really had time to talk about it much. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. Just trying to figure out what the civilizations might be for the second idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, that's fine.
I think it might also be worth mentioning, we had people come in yesterday, and we showed them, well, I was asked to show them alone for some reason. I don't know why the whole team wasn't brought. But, I showed them the prototype for the first thing. So I guess it's just worth bringing that up. I just remembered. That's it.
Was there any useful feedback there?
No, we just said that it's cool pretty much. That was it.
Really? I thought your idea was super relevant to them. I thought Venny was relevant to them too, but I thought
Venny was extremely relevant, and they were like on the spot talking about ways they could use her ideas. I had a little conversation mid Venny explaining about how they could. Yeah, that was the thing.
Ah, okay. Well, I thought your idea was like going to be useful to them only because like if you're going to end up, I mean, they were speaking about recording like a professional's movement in golf, and that would mean you'd be recording a thing, which is what your thing does. Don't know.
Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, I think he only called you away because James was interested in getting you to work with the real life people from real places and not just, making stuff for, your university things. So that you had like a thing, like maybe they would have bought your idea or whatever. I think it was just more to show you off so that the real world could maybe have an interest in you.
Good thing I'm an extremely interesting person.
I think your ideas is not you. But it is you, but yeah.
That was mean.
That was...
Bernie's going to the gulag for a
week.
week.
What did you say?
Like, you think his ideas are interesting, not him.
No,
So what is that?
Yeah. Why would they care about Dean? They care about Dean being productive. They would.
Okay, this is the conversation for another time.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
This
Anyway.
is uncomfortable.
Okay, so we've discussed that. Tomorrow we are going to finish up in the morning with what we've got so far. And then we need to... Obviously we have a guest lecture tomorrow. But after that, we need to get on with our presentations. So ideally, we will have as many hands on deck for that as possible.
Should I see if I can come up with a small prototype for this while the presentation is being worked on and give all I can to the presentation as far as assets go? So that isn't the case. Okay.
I think we've got enough prototypes, what we've got so far. I think the idea is formed enough to be able to explain it without having to demonstrate it. Alan specifically said we don't need to have prototypes for everything. Yeah. I think we're good enough as that is at the moment. Okay. I'd say we'll develop a structure of how we want to do the presentation tomorrow.
Yeah.
Based on how we're feeling and stuff like that. Where we're at with our ideas. I mean, it might be that somebody needs an hour just to finish up something, and they're like, right, then I can communicate it all back in like a paragraph or something. And if that's the best use of their time, then that's the best use of their time.
Yeah.
So we'll decide then. But yeah, no, if we can have one person consolidating like slides, we decide who wants to say what. We decide exactly what we want to demonstrate.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I think we'll be good for Friday.
Should be fine, I imagine.
Are we all in agreement?
Full agreement.
This is when you say yes.
Sure.
I can only see Ella through the arm of the microphone. But yeah, okay. Well, I say we're pretty much done there. Unless anybody has anything else they really want to bring up or want to talk about.
Anything else I think can be saved for later.
Okie dokie.
As far as I go, at least. In this.
Nothing springs to mind immediately for me.
Cool.
Very well.
I have nothing.
We'll leave it there. This was a short one. You're welcome.
Yeah. This is going to save me some time when I'm looking through the damn thing.
It's going to save me some time when I'm rendering. Like 30 seconds.
I'm looking forward to not having to put up with a 3-hour upload.
You could put this one on SoundCloud.
Christ.
Anyway, right, we'll leave it there. Sync us out, Dean.
Sure. 3, 2, 1.